Live from Johannesburg, this is ENCA. Good afternoon and thank you for joining us here today. Now, a magistrates court in East London has heard the application of a disgruntled group from the ANC in the Eastern Cape. They want the party's provincial conference results nullified, saying it should have been adjourned after violence broke out. Let's go live now to East London, where ENCA's reporter Koli Mgambi is standing by, also there where Deputy President Cyril Ramaphosa just did that 45-minute plea for unity in the ANC. Koli.
Well, thank you very much, Gustav. As you say, the proceedings wrapping up here today, but not quite, Gustav, because the conference has also still got to make those declaratory statements. They usually call it the report that declares the declarations of the conference. But perhaps to pick up on your earlier point, Gustav, that you mentioned in the intro, and that is that of the court case, which we understand was heard on an urgent basis in the courts here in East London. And one of the people that I actually saw sitting with the lawyers, I assume he has been briefed, is the newly elected Provincial Secretary Lulama Ngcukaitobi. And let's speak to him now just to get a sense of where things are regarding that. Mr. Ngcukaitobi, thank you very much for your time. Perhaps let's start with congratulations are in order. How's the feeling of being the newly elected Provincial Secretary?
Thanks very much. The feeling mixed. Because being elected as a provincial secretary comes with responsibility, in particular with the challenges that the ANC is going through.
All right, let's pick up on the court case. The lawyers telling me that the court did hear the matter on an urgent basis and they've reserved that judgment for 9 a.m. Can you confirm if indeed that is the case?
No, that's the case. That's the case. The judgment has been reserved for tomorrow at 9 a.m. But what we think is that because the key fundamental issue was that the applicants wanted to interdict the conference, and the conference comes to an end today. And therefore, if the judgment is reserved for tomorrow, that means the case already has been lost by the applicants from where we are seated. In fact, we thought that the case was part of the fishing expeditions for those that wanted to have the conference not proceeding.
So I pick up in your words that you're sounding very confident that you are going to win this court case. Is that essentially what I'm hearing? Is that what you are telling the viewers here, that this court case will be won by the newly elected leadership here?
Definitely we are going to win. The African National Congress is going to win the case against those that have applied in court, because all the allegations that were made against the conference proceedings were frivolous and lacked substance from where we are. So there is no way in which we can lose that particular case. For the record, the intention of the applicants were to interdict the conference, and the conference comes to an end today, and it has not been interdicted. Now, to say tomorrow that it will be a judgment, that means it's just an academic exercise to tell us about the proceedings of the case. Nothing that will able them to interdict the conference. The conference has not been interdicted.
The Deputy President, perhaps as a last, as we wrap up our conversation, the Deputy President's speech, very much a unity speech, urging both sides. On your part, the newly elected leadership urging you not to be victorious to a point where you're actually looking and sounding arrogant, and saying that perhaps the immediate task is to ensure that those who were not present here when this closing conference, when this conference as it closes, the duty would be for you to make sure that they are returned to the ANC. Is that what you are going to be working towards with immediate effect, achieving unity? Because I think one of the glaring things here, Secretary, was the absence of the recently former chairperson of the province, along, of course, with other delegates.
It was very regrettable that he was not part of the conference proceedings yesterday evening and today. But having the Deputy President he spoke after the Eastern Cape Provincial Chairperson, Comrade Mabuyane, spoke. Same same approach to things, same understanding that we have to extend a hand, an olive hand, to those that were almost opposing us towards the provincial conference. There is no other alternative. We have to unite the organization, we have to stabilize the ANC, we have to ensure that it grows from strength to strength and it works for the interest of the people of the Eastern Cape.
As you stabilize the ANC secretary, people are watching very closely, saying that what this conference actually is about is the resources in government. This is a fight for resources in government. Can you assure at least the citizenship, the citizenry of the Eastern Cape here, that we are not going to see an immediate change in cabinet, because that then will further exacerbate these divisions, wouldn't you think?
I can't vouch for what the organization will behave from here towards the future. But what I can assure you, if there are changes, those changes will be necessitated by the circumstances that seek to achieve the better results for the peoples of the Eastern Cape. It will not be in the interest of the resources as you speak. But I can assure you that what we want and we wanted going forward is to stabilize the organization, to ensure that the government works in the interest of the peoples of the Eastern Cape. You know that the background of the Eastern Cape is a well-known background. So we cannot waste the people's time of the Eastern Cape by playing politics when the needs of the people are blatantly there.
So in other words, Phumulo Masualle will remain Premier of this province up until 2019?
I cannot vouch. Circumstances dictate. But we will never chase people around unnecessarily.
All right. Thank you very much for your time. Newly elected Provincial Secretary Lulama Ngcukaitobi. Thank you, sir. If you could go that way. Let me bring in quickly now the editor of the Daily Dispatch, and that is Sibusiso Ngalwa. Mr. Ngalwa, you and I sat there listening to both speeches of the newly elected chair and the deputy president. What's your feeling around unity in this province?
I think the conciliatory tone of the incoming chairperson and also the deputy president was quite reassuring. But I think talk is cheap. You know, to speak unity and to act united are two different things. I think we saw the same happening in KZN, and I think your question actually and the response you got from the secretary now around the question of the premier is quite interesting, because he cannot guarantee that. But I think also the attitude of this new leadership will be determined, the attitude of this new leadership towards their detractors will be determined by also the response from them. Because if you had earlier the Masualle grouping that gathered at the City Hall, Mlibo Qobushiane, who's the provincial spokesperson of the ANC, actually saying that as far as they are concerned, they still recognize Phumulo Masualle as the legitimate leader of the Eastern Cape. So I think the attitude of both groupings will determine how they move forward.
Sbu, talk to me about what we are seeing now, which is, of course, the unfolding court case tomorrow. Do you foresee a situation where we might actually see similar results that we are seeing in KZN? And that is what, in fact, the Deputy President touched on at the very beginning of his speech, that the court case in KZN is what other leaders are actually trying to sort out in KZN. Do you foresee this conference being nullified or invalidated based on procedural matters, which, by the way, the officials here were were clear that they were thorough, and it's to make sure that they don't lose in court if they're taken to court?
Obviously, Toli, I cannot predict what how the court case will conclude, but I can say the following, that insofar as ANC processes are concerned, I mean, if you listen to Zizi Godwa at the press conference last night, you can see that in terms of the steering committee and the deployees of the NEC that are here, that they seem to be doing things so meticulously. It's like ANC processes are now being done to satisfy courts even before they get to court, which in a way someone might say it's good because the ANC has to abide by the law, but it also tells you the fact that now factions within the ANC have found the courts to be a home for all their disputes. So in this particular case, how it is concluded, we don't know which way it will go, but you also heard Mlibo Qobushiane again earlier saying that as the leadership or as the Phumulo Masualle core, they will not be going to court. Now what that to me suggests to me is that at a public level, you have the leaders saying we're not going to challenge the outcome of this conference, but then what you will have is 1 or 2 members, as you saw in KZN, saying they have a legitimate right to challenge this conference, which is probably why this matter is before court. So that those 2 confusing messages that are out there.
Just finally, Sbu, and very quickly, we are out of time. The Deputy President coming here essentially to endorse this newly elected leadership. Do you think that he may suffer the same embarrassment that we saw President Jacob Zuma suffering earlier this year when he went and endorsed Andile Lungisa's chairmanship of the Nelson Mandela Bay region? Quite embarrassing for a very senior leader of the ANC. Here's the second in charge coming to endorse a massively contested conference which resulted in blood being spilled. Do you think he'll suffer the same consequences here?
I think as for now, as things stand, actually he sees it as a boost, and anybody else looking from outside, it looks like a boost until the court finds otherwise. But I think the circumstances here are slightly different in that by the time Andile Lungisa went to conference, the NEC and I think Gwede Mantashe had been public in saying that Andile Lungisa should not stand as regional secretary. You may argue that the blood that was spilled here yesterday kind of matches that, in that the Deputy President should not have come. But if you have the deployees of the NEC and also the steering committee saying it's all systems go, the conference was correct and that it met all the requirements, so it then paves the way for him to come through. So I guess that then will be determined by how the ANC, NEC deals with this, but also how the court finds.
We can't leave this conversation without talking about the national pictures. We head to the December conference. You heard the Deputy President say everybody is watching this conference, from local, as in South Africa, the world is watching the December conference. This conference having concluded with Oscar Mabuyane now at the helm, does it boost his chances? The Eastern Cape has somewhat been a stronghold of his, so to speak.
I think he's in a better position, I can say. But I think the fact that you still have some members, the Phumulo Masualle grouping outside, it means that between now and December, the attitude of this new leadership, if they extend an olive branch to Phumulo Masualle and his supporters and are able to consolidate the Eastern Cape delegation going to conference, I think he'll be in a better position, because you do know that KZN has gone through this exercise, but how they dealt with it, if this leadership is smart, they will actually learn the lessons from KZN in how they deal with their detractors, in that you do not throw people out and push them out into the street, because they come back as adversaries and end up dividing the province, as you saw in KZN. But the Eastern Cape has a history of a divided province. But I must say, though, as ironic as this may sound, the Phumulo Masualle Mabuyane leadership actually did stabilize this province. So it does seem like what you saw yesterday was some kind of unraveling of sorts of that united Eastern Cape. So it will be interesting to see how the new leadership takes things going forward. But as things stand, Ramaphosa is sitting pretty.
All right. Thank you very much for your incisive analysis. Thank you very much. As always, Sbusiso Ngalwa, he is the editor of the Daily Dispatch newspaper. It's a newspaper that is based here in East London, Gustav. Well, that's how we're going to wrap it for the moment, Gustav. Let me just remind the viewers that there is an upcoming media briefing. We are told that that media briefing is going to happen anytime once the processes inside conference have actually been put to bed. So there is still that upcoming media briefing that will be done by the newly incoming provincial executive of the ANC.
Thanks so much. That was Thuli Mugambi joining us live from East London there at the ANC's provincial elective conference in the